flavor is generated from the place where you are. What's available, what is interesting. I like to experiment. I like to try things. I like to make different things, but I also listen to what the market wants, but it's also what do I like and what do I think I could do well. So, we're doing some pretty cool stuff beyond just buying some flavors and pouring them into a tank.
Hey, it's Nate Disarro, and welcome to Titans of Industry, the podcast where I talk to industry leaders and innovators who are at the top of their game and leading the pack in their fields, uncovering some of the best stories in today's business landscape.
In this episode, I speak with Phil Brandon, the founder, CEO, and head distiller of Rock Town Distillery. When faced with a layoff during his corporate IT career, Phil took his passion for whiskey and transformed it into an iconic Arkansas operation and is the first to ever distill bourbon in Arkansas. Using his background in engineering along with his MBA, Phil has put his entrepreneurial talents to the test by creating the Rock Town brand, distribution process, manufacturing standards, and a whole lot more. He has been creating handcrafted, award-winning spirits that you can find in restaurants, liquor stores, and he's winning contests all around the world. Now, let's get to the episode. But before we do, let's talk about content strategy and video for marketing your business. Our team at Content Titan is committed to great storytelling no matter what industry you're in. It's crucial to engage, entertain, inform, and captivate your audience, and video is the best way to do it. Having worked with people and organizations of all shapes and sizes, our team has the experience to deliver the right content at the right price. We are easy to do business with, and we know how to get you results. Visit contenttitan.co to learn more. Now here's the episode with Phil Brandon. Phil Brandon, thanks so much for hopping on the podcast with us. I met you, I think, about a decade ago, and your company was only a couple of years old, I think, at the time. And here we are in this beautiful tasting room. Give me the short story. How did we get here?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's kind of crazy, but yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast. This is really cool. It's great to see you again after all the years, and we were over on East 6th Street in a warehouse that we had turned into a distillery. But prior to that, 2009, I basically incorporated the company, and we got started in 2010. I had been laid off from my job at Verizon Wireless after they acquired Alltel, and was challenged with trying to figure out what to do with my life, and decided that in order for me to stay in Arkansas, which was my home state, and my wife's home state, and our family was here, to start my own thing. And I wanted to be creative and do something that I thought was exciting, and turned out it was starting a distillery.
So I know you were in IT, is that right? Kind of an IT role at Verizon?
It wasn't like I was plugging in computers or working on servers, but it was the interface between business and IT, helping the two talk to each other. Alltel developed a whole lot of custom software, and so I got to help with some pretty cool projects there.
So why a distillery? I mean, when that time period in your life came, why was it kind of let's forget the technology? I mean, there's a lot of technology here, but yeah, let's move into a distilled liquid.
Well, it's just kind of one of those things that happened. Wasn't like I grew up as a kid and my dad was a moonshiner, and his dad, and it was in the back of my mind to always want to do it. It was really I enjoyed drinking whiskey. I kind of got into the geek factor, where I'd go on the internet at work. Of course, I'm at work, right? But our projects were slowing down because Verizon had acquired Alltel, and there was less things to do during the day. But you're there in your office doing things anyway. And so I'd buy a bottle over the weekend from Scotland or, Kentucky or wherever. And, on Monday, after consuming it, not to excess over the weekend, but, responsibly, I would research the distillery. And I learned about the science of distilling and that sort of thing. And I've got an engineering background, electrical engineer by degree, and a master's in business. And it was like, wow, this is, pretty cool. I like distilling. This is neat. Whiskey's delicious. But then I learned that there are craft distilleries starting up throughout the country. This was 2009. It wasn't that popular back then, but there were some out on the West Coast and some on the East Coast. And I was like, wow, that would be pretty cool. I knew about craft brewing, but making beer didn't capture my imagination. But making whiskey, now that could be pretty cool. And so I took the skills that I had learned at Alltel about putting a package together of, this is the statement of work, this is what it's going to cost, these are the things we have to buy to be able to do it, and, scoping a project, basically. Well, I decided to turn my own idea into a project, and I scoped it. And so I went to the manufacturers that make the stills and got prices and got, ideas for who to call as a consultant. In IT, we use consultants all the time, right? We're installing a software package, and IBM is the consultant, and you hire them or somebody else that's a licensed consultant and bring them in. So I was using that same sort of technique to start a distillery, and ended up hiring a guy that was a former master distiller from Maker's Mark named Dave Pickerel. He was kind of the Johnny Appleseed of craft distilling at the time. He helped hundreds of distilleries start up, and he was my consultant, and I, put together a package business plan, went around to banks, only need one yes, and that's all I got was one yes. Got an SBA loan through the stimulus package during the Great Recession, and raised a little bit of money from friends and family, rolled my Alltel 401k, put all my chips on the middle of the table, and rolled the dice. And so that was how it got started.
I love that story. And it's interesting because you essentially took a blueprint that you knew worked in the Alltel world, in the Verizon world, of how to get sort of a product to market, move it over to a brand new industry that you hadn't been a part of at all, and sort of just said, well, we'll change this, but ultimately the blueprint is kind of the same.
Right.
And I work with a lot of clients all the time. We do videos and create content for people all over the place, and we'll work in one industry tomorrow and another industry the next day, and we'll take what we saw here and bring that idea up to a different industry.
Right.
And they're like, oh my gosh, we've never thought of that before. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, we're not genius. We're just borrowing it from over here. And
right.
Over here. And 9 times out of 10, it works across platforms.
Yeah.
People just don't think like that all the time.
Right.
But,
yeah.
And I think, when we talk to people that start businesses and they're kind of trying to figure things out, it's like, I mean, the blueprint's there. You just kind of have to shift a few pieces around.
Right. Yeah. And it was very similar type of, figuring out what it would take to build something, from a software perspective or from a real hardware perspective, stills and pumps and tanks and, all that sort of stuff. And then process was a big part of it. We process spirits and distill them, and that's, a process of making something. And prior to Alltel for 14 years, I worked as a sales engineer, calling on manufacturing plants, selling industrial process controls. So I had a lot of familiarity with how industrial processes work. So that background, coupled with the skills that I developed at Alltel with putting together a package enabled me to start Rocktown,
You were primed and ready to go, and you had developed a tasting palate to know what was good spirits
Well,
versus
I
not so
practiced
good.
really hard.
It's one hobby turned profession that I think a lot of people practice at, just don't ever make it to the
Yeah.
professional level.
Right. Yeah.
So as you developed the brand, how did the brand come about? How did you determine what types of spirits you wanted to make? Where did you start with all that versus where you're at now?
You start a distillery and you need to name it something. And a lot of distilleries in Scotland are named Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, and they're named around where they are, like the river or the island sky or what, the hill that they're from. So I wanted to try to figure out a name that I didn't want to call it Little Rock Distillery. I didn't want to call it Arkansas Distillery, but something that was, you know, paid, I guess, homage, for lack of a better word, to where we're from. And Rocktown, popped up on Wikipedia as, a potential nickname for Little Rock. I'd never heard it called that before. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. It kind of has an older sound to it. And you could, people always ask, well, what's Rocktown? I was like, we're from Little Rock. And they're like, oh, makes sense. It's not completely obvious, but once you get the connection, it makes sense. So that was the brand. I was going to call it Rocktown. And then, what are we going to make first? Well, I want to make whiskey or, bourbon. But bourbon has to be aged. And so then you need something to sell, though, while that's aging. So what can you make that doesn't require aging? And, it's vodka and gin. So those were our first three products that we started making. Of course, we only started selling vodka and gin, initially, but bourbon came later. So that was kind of the impetus, and we got started with that. And then it's just listening to the market. Around 2011, the Moonshiner show on Discovery Channel got to be a big thing. And I was like, well, I guess I need to make a moonshine. And I came out with, the regular corn whiskey and then the apple pie. And the apple pie was super popular, and the Moonshiner show gave it credence, and, it was off to the races with that. And now we probably have literally, I don't know, 50 different products, from flavored vodkas to liqueurs to gins to different styles and types of whiskey, from bourbon to rye to single malt. I like to experiment. I like to try things. I like to make different things, but I also listen to what the market wants. But it's also, what do I like and what do I think I could do well? And yeah, so that's how that came about.
So as a well-versed consumer, not necessarily a well-versed practitioner in how this stuff kind of comes about. So when you think about developing a new product, what all goes into that piece of the process?
Sometimes it's, what is readily available. So when I started making bourbon for, the first bourbon ever made in the state of Arkansas, well, what are the typical ingredients in bourbon? It has to be at least 51% corn. And then there's wheat or rye, typically as a middle grain between the corn and the malted barley. And rye wasn't really farmed in Arkansas, so wheat was. So I could get wheat. So I decided the first bourbon would be a wheated bourbon. And I used Arkansas corn, Arkansas soft red winter wheat, and malted barley, and made bourbon. And then beyond that, it's like, well, what else can we do? And I finally got a farmer in Arkansas to grow rye. So then we made a rye whiskey. And then I started experimenting with different mash bills for bourbon, where I'd take the wheat out and put something like chocolate malt in the middle, or golden promise malt from Scotland, or peated malt, or unmalted barley. I've done one with rice, now. So there's, lots of creative options to try different things to see. And you don't always know on the whiskey side how it's going to turn out because it has to be aged. So, my initial attempt was to just change the same 9% of the mash bill that I used wheat with 9% of other grains to see if would the grain really make that much difference in the flavor. And by gosh, it sure does, even just 9%. So I learned a lot through that process. And our newest bourbon is called La Harpe Low Rye, and it's a bourbon that has a low amount of rye in the mash bill, just 12% rye. And, to see how that would do since we've got rye and available now. And so just things like that, what's available, what is interesting, what can we do easily enough. That's kind of what I do.
I love it. You brought up a couple of interesting things. First of all, you started your business in what is now East Village before East Village was cool.
We were the first thing there. Yes.
I'd like to think you contributed to the culture of, hey, let's actually do something over here,
right.
and generated something that people came to. And then all of a sudden now it's becoming a thriving little spot. There's Lost 40 Brewery, of course. And,
right.
You've got a coffee shop and a business in your old space, and
yep.
the rail yard barbecue joint next door.
Right.
But now you're literally on Main Street in Little Rock, Arkansas. So obviously regionally you are homegrown, but you use ingredients that are also homegrown.
Right.
Was that a decision from day one?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Why stay local?
Well, it's a thing in whiskey where that's similar to wine, and it's this idea that flavor is generated from the place where you are, and it's terroir. It's a French word. I probably butchered it just then, but why would I buy corn from Indiana, through a major manufacturer that would bag it and send it to me when I could, find a local farmer, find a grain elevator, get it, prepared and cleaned for me, and I could use Arkansas corn to make a true Arkansas bourbon. It just made sense from a whiskey and, wine world kind of thinking. So, and then, I source all my boxes locally and, use local suppliers as much as I possibly can, because those relationships are just so important. And being able to drive over there or, see the guy that you're buying from out at dinner, all those kinds of things where you develop those relationships with local suppliers, is invaluable. So, it's always been really important to me to source locally.
So, been at this a while now. Feel like you
12 years
probably have learned a few things along the way. What keeps it fun? What keeps you going and motivated to kind of wake up every day and try something new, come out with a new product?
I don't know, I just love it. We've come out with probably 2 new products this year and 2 last year. We started doing a line of liqueurs, and that's been exciting. It's exciting to, I've got some tremendously great people working with me, and to work with them every day is exciting. I've got great distributors and relationships there that are fun to work with. And then there I said it again, travel to Chicago to Whiskey Fest to pour our whiskeys for people from all over the country, to travel to Maryland to work with those people, or travel to Seattle. I get to go to Chicago for a conference or New Orleans for a conference. So it's really just it's dynamic, it's fun, it's interesting. I any given day for me could be anything from there's a problem with the boiler or the air compressor. So, with my electrical engineering background, I can troubleshoot the electronics to getting in Adobe Illustrator and modifying a logo or a poster to get a t-shirt made for a bar, to working on pricing schemes and market tactics for a distributor in a new state, to negotiating pricing for bottles and things from suppliers, and working on supply chain management, to repairing the dishwasher, or we had a plug behind the one of the bar wells start smoking on last Saturday. So I spent most of Saturday repairing a plug for the dishwasher. So there's so many different things. I was up on the roof 2 days ago looking at gas pipe sizing to see if we could get a new boiler and whether we had enough gas to supply that. It's never the same thing every day, and it's exciting and different, and and it's a great responsibility. I have 25 employees now, where I have to come in and do payroll. I have to come in and make sure that the bank statements balance and all that stuff too. So it's fun because there's a lot to do and a lot of different things to do. So I'm not doing the same thing every day.
Well, you check pretty much all the boxes of a stereotypical entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, right.
Doing all those things, including the brand itself, right? Didn't you kind of develop the look and feel of the brand? And I think early on you were doing your own photos and everything.
Yeah,
you're still doing that?
I was doing my own photos. No, luckily, as time has progressed, I've got a person that takes a lot of photos and does social media for us, and she's been doing a great job for the last 4 years or so. And I do have an artist that works with me on labels, but I get into Illustrator and tweak them before I submit them, for approval at the federal government and all those kinds of things. So I still keep my hands in those things, but luckily I'm able to let some experts help me now, where, the first, website I developed by myself, in WordPress, to, today we've got some developers that help me, so it's nice to make progress, but not have to do everything yourself. But at least I have enough knowledge to be able to speak with them about it,
Yeah. You mentioned earlier you just developed a line of liqueurs.
Right.
And, every time I turn around and go to the grocery store, or the liquor store, there's some new type of canned seltzer or liqueur flavored drinks. The industry is getting more and more creative and releasing more and more products, it seems like. So what trends are you seeing, and how are you trying to kind of keep up and keep things going so that, people continue to see the brand and get curious about it?
Right. Well, there I go. Again.
We'll just do a little ticker on the...
Yeah. It's a drinking game. Every time Phil says, you have to take a shot of any Rock Town product.
Listen, you could sell a lot of product that way.
Well,
Be a new...
gosh. The one thing I've decided I was going to avoid up to now has been the seltzer craze. I looked at it really hard a couple years ago, and it was obvious this was going to be a big part of the market, and everybody else saw the same thing. And if you ask any liquor store owner or any distributor today, they probably get pitched 50 new seltzers any given week. Seriously, there are so many new ones out there, and it was a whole new thing. I don't carbonate anything. So I would have to get a CO2 tank that was enormous, learn about carbonation and how to prepare those and how to buy a canning line and the whole thing. And it was just going to be enormous. So I decided I just wasn't going to do seltzers. While it seemed like there was an opportunity and everybody and their brother have gotten into it, and there's going to be some shakeout, obviously. But while that was going on, I had a local restaurant group, Yellow Rocket Concepts, come to me and say, hey, we use a lot of triple sec in our margaritas. And could you make a triple sec? Because we're not real happy with the service that we're getting, and they're having a hard time getting it because of the pandemic and blah, blah, blah. And we really need a good triple sec because we believe it's really important in a good margarita to have a great triple sec. So I was like, well, I don't know. Let me try, So I went back. I've got a room in the back that's kind of my lab. It's not really a lab, but it's just a room.
It's more fun to call it a lab.
Right. It's the laboratory. And I went to work with different oranges and different, ingredients to come up with a triple sec. And I finally landed on one. And I thought it was pretty similar to what they were doing, but a little bit better, a little bit less sugar. But delicious triple sec, I thought, and they agreed. And now we have the triple sec in all their restaurants, which is awesome. But it also showed me that there was an opportunity in the market between the really high-end Cointreau, Grand Marniers, and the really low-end De Kuypers and other triple secs that are out there for a handcrafted triple sec to be kind of in the middle there price wise, but super high quality. And so I decided to also do a ginger liqueur and then an elderflower liqueur, and then we just came out with our cream de cacao, and I've got a couple more on the drawing board. And so it's just kind of like seeing where the opportunity is, and there's a little gap in the market there that I think we're filling really nicely, and they're just plain delicious. So for the elderflower, we went and harvested Arkansas elderflowers. We use a vacuum distillation technique to extract the flavor of the elderflower. So we're doing some pretty cool stuff beyond just buying some flavors and pouring them into a tank,
which essentially is the definition of a craft distillery, right? I mean, you kind of get to have your lab, and you go in and kind of play with things, and you're not just following a recipe day in and day out. You're kind of constantly figuring out what does the market need, what do the customers need, what is, what's going to make a better product than what exists in the market.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Well, for anybody that's unaware of who Yellow Rocket is, probably your favorite restaurant is on the list of restaurants they own. Heights Taco Tamale and Local Lime specifically, known for their margaritas, have phenomenal margaritas. So go hit them up, get a margarita, and then go by your local liquor store and grab a bottle of Rock Town and make your own. So shifting gears a little bit, talking about sort of the business as a whole, we're storytellers at heart. That's what my company does, and that's what I'm passionate about. And to me, business is about how good is your story. That's what people are buying. You got to have a good product. That's a given.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they're choosing your product over something else because of the story behind it. And maybe that story is it's made with better ingredients that's going to make my taste buds feel better. But to you, what part does storytelling play in your business, and how do you use that to kind of move your business forward?
Wow. Okay. That's a tough one. Marketing is storytelling and having a great story. And we tell the story at every tour that we give about how I was in corporate America, got laid off, said, screw corporate America, I'm going to do my own thing. And I wanted to start a distillery and, wanted it to be in my hometown and be all about Arkansas. And so that's kind of our initial story, our origin story, and that's kind of the story that we tell. Once you kind of get out of Arkansas, you kind of just tell the story about handcrafted, dedication to quality, that our passion is our spirit. That's our slogan. And tell the story about how we've been able to continue to grow and continue to win major international awards for our products that are handcrafted right here in, Little Rock, Arkansas. So
I love it. And it's a story that, I got drawn to and connected to 10 years ago, and the story hasn't changed, but the brand certainly has developed because of the story. I'm confident in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. There I go. Add another shot to the counter. When you look at the industry, we talked about this a little bit before we started the interview. It's something people are drawn to. Visually, it's very intriguing. Every bar you go to has some different display of the bottles, and a lot of them backlight them so that the colors really stand out. The bottles are beautiful. The color of the spirits is really attractive to look at. But it's an industry that a lot of people don't know the guts of. So what's something that you feel like is unique to this industry that a lot of people don't know? What's kind of one of those secrets of the industry that would surprise people?
Well, I think people today are a lot more curious about where things come from and how they're made than they've ever been before. And we're really big about telling, how we make everything and telling the story of the products, from the corn that we buy from Arkansas farmers and that sort of thing. I don't know that people really realize about spirits how incredibly regulated it really is. I mean, bourbon is arguably the most regulated consumer product on the planet. And we've got the federal government, watching everything we do. Every label we put on a bottle is submitted to the federal government. Every formula for anything we make goes to the federal government. We send 5 reports a month to the federal government for what we do. The fill tolerance on each bottle is within a tolerance that's given to us by the federal government. The amount of alcohol or the proof is regulated, and we have highly sensitive, very expensive instruments to measure that so that we are within that tolerance. We pay federal excise tax on every drop that leaves the building. All those things that people, really don't realize. It's not making widgets and trying to get them in Walmart. Every state has different permits. So for me to sell in the other states that I sell in, I have to be permitted in that state. Some of the states require us to pay excise taxes directly to that state if the product leaves Arkansas and goes to that state. It's just a quagmire, a spider web, whatever you want to look at, of regulations throughout the state, throughout the United States. It's actually easier for me to sell my product in the United Kingdom than it is to sell it in Georgia. It's crazy, and became very evident during the pandemic when people were ordering online for things to come to their house and realized, I can't order a bottle of vodka to come to my house. Why not? And there's a lot of regulations. Why not? And more that's starting to open up in some states, but it's regulations that were written in 1932 at the end of Prohibition that are still being used today. And there's some modernization that needs to happen, but I don't think people really realize that. So,
yeah, well, I mean, you still hear in Arkansas about counties that just became wet counties, and
right, we've got almost 50% of our counties are still dry.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. Speaking of, nobody grows a business without running into challenges and having to overcome failures. And what's something that stands out to you going from day one when you had a bottle of gin, a bottle of vodka, and an aging barrel of bourbon that you couldn't sell yet to where you're at today? What's one of the biggest challenges you've overcome?
So many, so many challenges. Pick a good one, right? Initially our products when they came out weren't any good, and that was a huge challenge that I had to overcome, and took several years. And there's still people today that judge us by the first batch we ever made. But we've won over more than we've not, and I'm very happy to say that today we make some of the best stuff there is. One of the challenges midway through was we were in that building over on East 6th Street, and we had outgrown it, and we needed to move, or we needed to stay and remodel that building. And it was a big decision point. Do we stay or do we find somewhere else? And initially we were going to stay. And then this building we're in now, I had a real estate friend, and he happened to send it to me. He didn't know I was in this decision point or anything, just an email. Hey, this is a building that's come available. Thought it might be good for something like what you do. And initially I said, no, thanks. We're going to stay where we are. And then a week later I was like, well, wait a minute. Let me go take a look at it. And 4 years ago, June, we've been in here 4 years now. We moved to Main Street here, and this building's 26,000 square feet versus 15,000 square feet. So we had a lot more space. I had gotten the law passed to allow us to sell drinks, sell by the drink, and have a bar. And so I created the bar and opened the bar, and that's been a big, success for us. So that was a real kind of inflection point, decision point, that we were very lucky to find this building and lucky enough to then buy the building and not rent. So, those were two really important challenges that we've faced and overcome.
Yeah, well, it always pays to have good friends, right? that you never know when something's going to pop up. The more people you know, the more relationships you have,
right?
The more luck comes your way.
Absolutely.
I love that. I like to talk a lot, podcasts obviously called Titans of Industry. Who are the titans in your life? Who are the people in your life that you kind of look up to or respect as leaders or industry innovators that you're kind of constantly paying attention to?
I look up to all the other fellow craft distillers, other distilleries that are out there. I follow the industry very closely. One of my mentors is a guy named Nick Pierce, who invested in the distillery and, kind of helped me shepherd the distillery from where we were. I guess it's been a year ago, maybe 2 years now. I bought all the investors out. So now we're 100% family owned by the Brandon family, which is basically me and my wife. But we still talk. Nick and I do on the phone quite a bit, and he owns a large liquor store, so he's able to, have some visibility into what's going on in the market, and so it's been great to have him as a mentor.
I love it. I like this question next because every business has its own unique answers to this question. But in my mind, every business has to have ideas, culture, and execution to stay afloat. So how would you rank those in order of importance? Ideas, culture, execution. And everybody's answer is a little different. So there's no right answer here. I'm just curious.
Wow. Yeah. Culture, I think, is one of the most important, and having a great culture where people can work with you and excel. And I worked really hard to try to be a leader that people can follow and have a great culture. Um, I mean, you can't have execution without an idea to execute. Um, but I think I execute really well. Our just-in-time manufacturing system that we work through, supply chain management, all that execution stuff. But if we didn't have an idea for a product that was selling and we didn't brand it well, it wouldn't sell. So those are, tied for second and third, I think, together. So that'd be how I would rank it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that's, like I said, there's no right answer necessarily.
Well, come on. What's the right answer?
But, well, I could give you my version, but nobody cares about that.
I don't know about that.
From a personal level, outside of business, even though as an entrepreneur, there really is no outside of business hours, but what do you do to keep yourself sane and kind of, is there anything you do on the outside world that influences how you are as a business owner?
So I've got some fairly unusual hobbies. Since I was in the 6th grade, I've been a flutist. And 2.5 years ago, it wasn't a pandemic decision. I'd already decided it pre-pandemic, but I decided, my wife's a church organist and music director, and once a year I would play the flute in church. And that Christmas of 2019, I played the flute in church, and I decided I wanted to try to get good at the flute again. And I started taking online flute lessons. And then I went to a flute store in New York City and bought a professional quality flute, which I'd always wanted. And since then, I've been working very hard at classical flute. And I play every day and take a lesson every other week. And really enjoying that. I used to be a really big tennis player and got really good at, not really good, I got pretty good at tennis. And there's so many parallels between being a musician and being a athlete. You get the same sort of, if you practice, you get better. You get the same sort of understanding of the levels of skill. As soon as you think, well, if I just get to be this good, and then you get to be that good and you go, wait a minute, there's so much more to learn. And you get that good and you're like, wait, so, and the, levels of ability between somebody that's at the peak of the game, like a Roger Federer, versus somebody in Little Rock, Arkansas, that's playing 4-5 tennis. You realize that gap between somebody that's playing in the Berlin Philharmonic and somebody that's like me. So it's intriguing and interesting, and you're always able to learn something different. You're always improving, and so that's exciting to me. So I play the flute.
Well, unique hobbies, but very interesting. A million years ago, I worked in the snow sports industry in Colorado and got to work with a lot of professional skiers and people in that realm, and totally understand what you're saying about, when you get good at something and you think you're good, and then you see somebody at that expert level, you realize, like, I mean, I may be able to ski fast downhill on a straight slope, but when I see a professional skier come in and ski twice as fast and cut twice as hard and do it with a margin of error very small,
right,
it's a whole different world, and I think that about a lot of the Olympic sports, because they're not the quote unquote normal big sports, and you see these guys go out and compete at Olympic level, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this
the
is
level of skill
Yeah.
and the dedication that it takes to get to that level of skill is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And people don't really realize it unless you're in that specific skill to understand that somebody that's at the elite level is elite because they can do things that most of us can't.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you mentioned a minute ago about this whole thing that hopefully we're pretty much through now, the pandemic. You started your business in the Great Recession, and then we're on the backside here of this global 2-year pandemic. What did that do for your business? Some people it hurt incredibly. Some people it actually did really good things. So obviously, I spent plenty of time at the liquor store, but I can only imagine what it did for your business.
Well, it was incredible. I mean, we were well positioned in a lot of liquor stores, and we're able to continue to sell through liquor stores. So I didn't take a day off from March 2020 till, December. We were working nonstop. Not only were we making our normal products and shipping those out the back door to our, distributors and stores and that sort of thing, but we also shifted the retail part of the business to hand sanitizer. And we sold hand sanitizer to the public, but we also donated a ton of it to hospitals and schools and homeless shelters and that sort of thing. So we were extremely busy and very fortunate that it was really a very busy time for us, and all my employees were able to stay on and are still here today, and we were able to be stewards to the community as well as our customers. So it was for us, I won't lie, it was a good thing.
Well, I'd love to run into a few quick hit questions. This has been a really fun conversation. I could probably go all day, but for the sake of everybody, we'll start to wrap things up. You mentioned a lot of audiobooks. Do you have a favorite book, or what's the latest book you've listened to?
I'm listening to Pappyland right now, which is about Pappy Van Winkle and all of that. Mark Benioff's Trailblazer, Radical Candor, Jeff Bezos's biography, and this one was pretty cool. Every good boy does fine, which is an acronym.
EGBDF.
Yeah, for the musicals.
Music.
Yeah, and it's a classical pianist talking about his development from a child to being a classical pianist. And so it was interesting to listen to him tell his own story. He narrates the book about going to the conservatory for music school and that sort of thing. So it's pretty interesting.
Very cool. Radical Candor is great as well. That whole concept, I think everybody should read that book.
Care personally, but challenge directly. I use that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. What's a part of your daily routine that you cannot skip?
I don't skip breakfast. I grew up on cereal, so I eat cereal every morning.
Are you more of a Netflix or news guy?
But today, I don't watch as much news just because it's all so bad. But I do watch a ton of Netflix and the other streaming services for sure.
Love it. What about favorite podcasts? Is there one that is your go-to? You don't miss an episode?
There's Whiskey Cast, which is one about whiskey, which is the OG for whiskey podcasts. The new one on the block, which isn't so new anymore now, is called Bourbon Pursuit. And then there's a few marketing ones, Jay Bears. There's a couple of flute ones I listen to. But yeah, I always, I used to always listen to rock and roll in the car, and more it's podcasts.
Love it. what's the best piece of advice you've ever given or received?
I mean, when I was starting the company, I got told by several people, don't do it. And
You
that
ignored it and went ahead anyway.
it was more like motivation. So it kind of was a reverse thing. So that would probably be it right there.
I love that. Do you have any newly formed habits? A lot of people got into new habits, whether good or bad, through the pandemic, or just shifting of culture.
Yeah, I guess I did get a Peloton and do ride that several times a week. I like to road bike on a real bike, and but I don't get to do it as much as I'd like to. Where the Peloton, I can, this morning at 6:10, I got up and did 30 minutes, and I feel a lot better during the day because I do that. So been working really hard on that.
Do you ever kind of tag team that and the flute practice at the same time?
Oh, absolutely not. No way.
All right. So if you could write a book, what would the title be?
Don't do it.
Hey, I mean, listen, I think so many businesses start the same way. You got this idea, you feel confident in it, and everybody out there says no.
Right.
And I think
There was one person that said yes, and it was my wife. And God bless her. She has stood by me all the way through. But she believed I could do it when, people in the industry that not in distilling, but in Little Rock that were very successful that I talked to about it were like, man, I wouldn't do it. And I went ahead. So there you go.
here I bet they're drinking your your whiskey right now.
Right.
So the Peloton, obviously a great purchase, but fairly pricey for all standards. What's
Yeah.
the best thing you've bought in the last year for under $100?
I'd say it was a bottle of Compass Box Spice Tree.
I like it.
It's a blended whiskey from Scotland, from a craft blender, and it is delicious. So
Very cool. All right. As a musician yourself, who's your favorite artist or musician?
oh, that's tough. That is very tough. It goes through so many different, time periods in your life. Who you like, I've always kind of been like if I'm learning a piece, I'm listening to that piece and listening to somebody play that. So I'm not always listening to the same thing over, same person. Sure, there's great flute players, that I admire. I've always, I was a U2 guy. I know that's kind of, generic in a sense, but I've been to more U2 concerts than any other concert, probably. I really liked the Police and Sting as a kid, so I really liked that type of music. So
I like it. All right. I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what's your favorite cocktail?
favorite cocktail is a Sazerac. So we make a off menu version of it here called the Filzerac, and it's my little riff on it. So that would be what I would order here.
Do we get to know the secret?
Well, the secret
ingredients?
is, for a Sazerac, you would wash the glass with the herb saint. So that means you pour it in and then you pour it out, and the residue in the glass provides some flavor. And I leave the herb saint in, so gives it a little bit more licorice flavor, and I really like licorice, so that's a Filzerac.
I love it. I didn't know that was your drink, and I was just in Kentucky with a client who ordered a Sazerac and told the bartender to leave it in.
Really?
I think you'll know who it is. I'll tell you in a minute. But
Okay, cool.
yeah, it was funny. So that's funny. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, thanks so much. This has been amazing. Love hearing your story and seeing the brand doing so well. If people want to check you out, where can they find the product? Where can they find you online?
Just go to rocktowndistillery.com and go to the where to buy section, and you can click on your state or your zip code and figure out where to get it. So thank you very much, Nate. It's been great visiting with you, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
If you liked this episode of Titans of Industry, head to contenttitan.co/podcast for more episodes or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks for listening.